Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Patriot coach Sherman Rivers, whose Pioneers are once again in the state quarterfinals. I believe, coach, this might be the seventh straight year in the state quarters,
This is our fourth straight year.
fourth straight year,
Okay. Yeah.
but at least seven, eight district titles in a row or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, congratulations, coach. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah. No problem.
Yeah, just to remind people, coach was a guard at Potomac, played on those great teams, got to the state playoffs quite often, never was able to get that chip, which he's going after this year as a coach. Played at William and Mary. Would you play for at William and Mary, coach?
Charlie Woolham was who
Oh,
recruited me, and then Rick Boyages took over once Charlie retired.
and Charlie was at Bucknell, wasn't he, at one point?
Sure
Yeah,
was.
good guy. My buddy Gerald Purnell, Oliver's little brother, played for Charlie. Talked about him all the time.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Coach played in Europe, played pro in Europe, did a little coaching at the college level, and has been a Patriot ever since. Coach, so this year I saw you guys at the live period, and I watched the whole game against Edison. And Coach, you guys looked terrible that day.
Oh, I know we
I'm like,
did.
I don't know how this team is going to do anything. And now you graduated Isaiah Vick. You graduated. What was the stocky kid, the shooter, left-hand kid,
Desmond Hopkins, Tay
Desmond Hop,
Barber,
the great
McCall
point guard.
Willard. Yeah.
You had these kids been with you for 3 or 4 varsity seasons. Amazing team. And I'm like, I don't think coach is going to be able to do it with these guys. Are you surprised to be here today, where you are today, given all the graduation you had and the late defection a few weeks ago?
Yeah. We didn't even talk about that fact that we lost a starter about 3 weeks ago. You know, I'm not going to say I'm surprised because I really thought that this group was very talented. I did. I just thought that they weren't listening to what we were trying to give them. And they thought that they were a lot better than what they were at the time, which was crazy to think because we were not good in the summertime. We were not good in the fall. But I knew the work that they were going to put in and what they were putting in. I knew our staff and, that, we're pretty good at trying to figure these things out. So I had faith in the fact that we were going to be a pretty good basketball team. Did I think we were going to be a state tournament level team? I wasn't sure about that. So to say that I expected to be at this point, especially seeing how we were at those times, I mean, you came to watch us play that game. We had 4 points at halftime. So,
Yeah,
and
I couldn't believe it.
the wild thing about it is that the one thing that we struggle with all summer, because I mean, bottom line is this: I don't coach our kids offensively in the off season as far as like running plays and sets because that's insane. Like they got to learn how to play basketball. I just want them to know what they're supposed to do kind of defensively. And then you fast forward to now, our team's averaging 73 points a game and one of the top scoring teams in Northern Virginia, which is insane thinking about where we were back then. So,
Yeah, and I want to get to some of your team, your actual players. Um, it, when you think about Sherman Rivers, uh, is this one of your best coaching jobs you've done? What grade would you give yourself this year? I know you could be tough on yourself.
I mean, I think it is. I think it. Not just myself, but our whole staff. We had a lot of work to do. We lost not just our everybody say, oh, we graduate seniors and our leading scorers. We lost all-time great high school players, I think, in the last couple of years as far as the players that did graduate. If you can see it right now, Jay Randall and Caden Bates just won the conference championship, beating CNU and they're to go to the tournament. So those are two great players there. You had Nasir Coleman the year before that, obviously in that class. Yeah. So just last year alone, I mean, Tay Barber, great player. This all met, first team all met
Forgot
kid.
about Tay.
Right? Exactly. You got Isaiah Vick, who's first team all state kid who went to multiple state tournaments and a couple different state championship games. So, you know, everybody likes to think that we just have talent and we just kind of roll the ball out and that's what it is. But bottom line is if you got to be preparing the kids to take over when the other kids leave because it's not the pros. You can't sign them to lifetime contracts and think they're going to stay around forever. They're going to graduate eventually. So, and everybody wants to say, oh, you have this kid, you have that kid. Well, nobody was saying that when they were in the ninth grade. Nobody was saying it when they were on JV as a 10th grader. It's called player development, and we like to take pride in that part. And, I had a post social media recently that you can see all those kids on the bench and some kids up in the stands cheering for the team from last year in the state quarterfinal. And now those kids are the ones in place trying to make a name for themselves and obviously make a run of their own.
Yeah, well, they're doing so, for sure. What about the late transfer? Now, you lost the starter to Highland, which is a private school in Warrenton,
Mm-hmm.
and did that mentally had an effect on your kids, good or bad? That when a kid would pull himself out of a team that's getting ready to make a playoff run?
I mean, I'm sure it was a hiccup for us. It's not an easy thing to do when you have somebody that is in your actual starting five that you kind of take out of that. But the great thing about this team this year is that we have like a lot of depth and a lot of kids that can play. And, it made some more minutes for some guys that maybe we're itching to get that opportunity. So, person at the top of that list would be Carson Cook, who I think has been one of our top players the last few weeks. He steps into that spot and now he's playing more minutes and he's able to do a lot of things he's doing. So, I mean, it's not ideal. You don't want to lose a player in your rotation that late in the season, right before the playoffs. But, we try to teach our kids to be ready for any sort of adverse situation that presents itself. It's no different if you have an injury and losing a kid and having to step up and do it that way. So,
Yeah. Well, Coach, one thing that had to help you a little bit this year is, ordinarily Region 6B is the toughest region in the state in football and basketball. I'm not sure about the other sports, but football, basketball, there's no doubt that they have the biggest, the largest number of teams, big schools, but also lots of athletic kids. You got a great demographic in a lot of these schools, so it's a tough region. This year, probably arguably not as tough as it's been in years past, and your district is definitely down this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Was it a relief? Was that a good thing for you this year, for you to rebuild this team on a measured way without having to worry about playing really tough games night in and night out?
I mean, talking about tough getting night in and night out, we still play a tough schedule. So,
Yeah, nope, there's no doubt about it.
regardless of what people might think the region is, and obviously you have some of your teams that are down at the bottom that are not very good as far as their record goes, but that's across the state. That's not a Region 6B thing. That's a region everywhere thing. A lot of teams that people thought were good in the past were just not very good this year. I know we like to joke around with those Patriot District guys, and they love to tell you that everybody in their district can beat everybody. But it's they'll be honest with you. They know that their district wasn't as good as it was in the past. So,
No way.
all you can do is coach the kids you have and get them to play the best they can against the competition that's there. Um, I always tell our guys this is not our job to make people feel better about themselves not being good. So our job is just to get good as possible so we can win the games that we're supposed to. I still think that our region was very good. The funny part about ours is that I think that our top three teams in our region were all on our side of the bracket, with ourselves, Potomac, and Gainesville being all that. So one of us had to eliminate the other, then the other one had to eliminate the other one, and that's
Yeah.
just how it worked out. And then you saw, I mean, we can talk about how the strength of schedule down there in the Stafford district, but Colonial Forge, really put a hurt into Forest Park in their semifinal and, pushed us a little bit there in the championship. So, like you said, everybody can play, especially at this point in the season. You got the last 8 teams in the state. So whether someone's down or not, it's just time to ready to get after it and get the wins if you can get them.
Yeah, and I also think this was a good year for Eastern Prince William was definitely stronger than it's been in the last few years. So I think that was clear. We heard that Randall Bills, who coaches the Purple Guys, has stepped down. Battlefield and Patriot is one of my favorite rivalries in the state. I
Right.
mean, the last 2 years, unbelievable games in terms of talent, in terms of crowd. Uh, I don't want to say bad blood, but there's a little bit of tension between the two neighboring programs. Do you think Randall, Coach Bill stepping down will have an effect on that rivalry?
No, well, I hope not. And it's one of those things that I always, I know that I don't say the name of the school, but I always have respect for what Randy does over there with his team, have them ready to play. We always know we had to be sharp on what we were doing. When I first got to Patriot, we were on the other side of it, kind of like what Gainesville is dealing with now, where everybody wanted to call it a rivalry. I said, well, it's not a rivalry until we win one. At that point, when I first got here, I think we had lost like 11 straight. So it was like, we're not going to call it that until we actually win one of these games. And then when we were able to start winning those games, the rivalry kind of intensified, and I thought it was one of the best ones throughout the state of Virginia, especially with how good the teams were, and usually it was for something, it was for some sort of championship or to advance in the playoffs. And I know obviously the last 2 years they haven't been what they have wanted to probably be, but they still always came, and it was always a very tough game for us, a very physical game. And sorry to see a coach like him go. I know he'll never say it, and well, I'm not saying this because he told me that, but I know it's a difficult job over there, as far as some of the expectations of the extracurriculars, as far as the students and maybe the parents go, and and him dealing with some of that. And I mean, there was times where he had a lot of success, and he was still dealing with a lot of things that you wouldn't necessarily want to deal with. So I'm sure that was taxing. But he's going to get time to spend more with his daughters and obviously with his family. And it's going to be different not seeing him over there on the sideline, but I'm sure whoever steps into that job, it's still going to be the same because the kids are still the same.
Yeah. Well, as a fan of the game, when you lose coaches with the professionalism and the know-how and the energy of a guy like Randall Bills, it's bad. It's bad for the game. But it'll be a chance for someone else to step up. Coach, when you think of the demographics, Battlefield, Gainesville, Patriot, and I know Gainesville beat you guys this year for I think a first time ever, or maybe in a while. Do the three districts have any? Who has the advantage in terms of demographic, in terms of getting the best players in student body? Or are these kids going to all be the same generally?
Are you talking about as far as the three schools?
The three school districts, Gainesville, Battlefield, and
I
Patriot.
just think it doesn't really matter, especially now you're in the specialty programs era where kids can pick and choose where they want to go to school coming out of middle school.
Yeah.
It's the bottom line is we have a good pool of kids in all those areas that are good at sports and have had a lot of probably you know playing in their rec days and trainers and things like that because they have access to those things. And we have very good rec programs over here in this area with the Gainesville Grizzlies with the football side of it, and the GBA on the basketball side of it. And then obviously we have the rec league as far as for baseball, but I know that's not as much because kids start playing travel a little bit earlier with that. I just think that things are very, very well run, getting kids and getting them to learn the game early. I know that all of us provide camps in the summer, so there's a place for kids to go learn the game there, and you add Brentsville into that, who's close to us. So just having all that access for kids to be able to play and get better, and then all of us. I mean, I know myself. I coach in the GBA program, the Gainesville football program. So you have guys that are coaches at the high school level, maybe even higher, that are helping out with these kids at young ages.
Yeah. Also, Kettle Run close by made a run to the
For
state
sure.
football.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
football. So you got athletes there too. Well, let's talk a little bit about your schedule. Let's go to the team first. Let's go to the team first.
Okay.
The thing that surprised me about your roster is this guy Elijah Gaskins, who I wasn't familiar with, is become a big scorer for you guys. Kai Wilcox is a guy that I've been watching for a couple of years, and Carter Crumity is a guy I've watched for a couple of years. But it seems like you got points from different people that I wasn't necessarily prepared for these guys to step up. So tell us a little bit about your team and the players that have had big years for you.
We'll talk about Elijah Gaskins first, who, you know, I feel should have been the player of the year in the district. Anytime that we've had a big game, he's been big time, regardless of the situation. Especially as of late in the playoffs, the last 5 games, he's upped his averages 3 points. He's shooting 50% from three. He is
Wow.
getting 5 rebounds a game and 4 assists a game and 2 steals a game. So, I mean, it just anytime that, and not only that, he's taking excellent care of the basketball. I mean, his assist to turnover ratio, I think, was like 5-2 at some point. So, it's one of those things that it would have been nice. He had to sit out last year as a transfer student. So he was supposed to be on that team that went to the state championship last year. So imagine if he was playing the point for that team.
Why do you have to sit out, Coach?
You're gonna have to talk to VHSL about that. He This is a kid that had never stepped foot in a public school before, coming from private school. I didn't even know the kid. I knew that he knew the other kids, and he just said he was transferring to Patriot. His parents had to pay tuition because he was a Manassas City kid and not a Prince William County kid. But at no point in time did anyone tell them that he was going to have to sit out a year because if he came back to a public school, which he had never gone to before, he was going to have to go to Osborne because that is where his parents resided in Manassas City. So instead, he had to sit out for the 365 last year and didn't get a chance to play. And
Unbelievable.
all that could have been alleviated if people were given all the information and had the things that they need to have to make the decision they need to make. But that's neither here nor there.
How about your other
But
kids?
Kai Wilcox, obviously, is somebody that's been a very good shooter for us in his first couple of years. He's doing more for us this year, obviously, starting in the backcourt. Spreads the floor and always does that, but he's made good decisions with the basketball. I spoke about Carson Cook stepping in, obviously being somebody that was on varsity last year, almost like a legacy type kid who both of his older brothers played at Patriot. His oldest brother, who I did not coach, is the only 1,000-point scorer in Patriot basketball history. And then his other brother played for me in the first couple of years that I was here.
Desmond Hopkins didn't get 1,000 points.
No, he got 950.
Wow, it's close. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So then you have Sean Madrigal, who's probably one of the most unsung guys out of that group. He was a first team all district kid, another double digit scorer for us. He is shooting 70% from two, 40% from the 3-point line, and 80% from the free throw line. He's only playing about 18 minutes a game and getting about 10 and a half points a game. So he's had an excellent season, I think. And he had 11 points, what was it, the other night in that game. So then you got Ethan Kaku, our big man inside. He does a lot of the dirty work, does a lot of the unsung things. 13 rebounds on Friday, 3 blocks in that game. Obviously, when they were a little undersized on their side, so he was able to take advantage of some of the stuff in the post. You talked about Carter Kermody, who's one of our veteran guys that can come in and make plays for us off the bench. Jeremy Hatton is another senior. We only have 3 of them, though. Jeremy Hatton, Ethan, and Carter. Jeremy comes off the bench for us, 6'4", wing player that can guard in the post, obviously with his size, but able to stretch the floor and shoot the 3. Had a double-double a couple weeks ago with 14 and 11. One of our young guys that's been playing very well in the last month is Christian Cole. His older brother, Cam, plays at Navy. Christian is probably one of our best on-ball defenders for sure, and high IQ kids. Just comes off the bench, is able to defend and can score the basketball. Had 7 straight points in that Gainesville game at a crucial point when we needed them, when we were up 3. Jaden Palmer, another one of our sophomores, backup point guard, very good defender, long arms, can shoot the 3, can score around the basket. We just got a lot of guys, man. Jeremiah Parrish, his uncle Devin Parrish was a first-team All-State kid back in our 2019 team that went to the state tournament and ended up losing to South County in the quarterfinal. So he's a 10th grader, one of our inside-outside guys, can shoot it. Big, strong kid. We got a lot of guys that can play, man. I feel like I'm going to miss somebody. And then, just even the guys that aren't playing as many minutes, they're helping us in practice every day. We just got a lot of guys that can play and can give us contributions.
When you're in a state tournament, maybe even regionals, and you have a team that's a year away, obviously this team could be really strong next year. You try to put that out of your mind and just take it. This future is now. We're not here to teach. We're here to win these games.
I mean, it's a different mindset, obviously, than what we were the last 2 years, having a really veteran group that, the expectation was not only for us to get there, but to possibly win it. To come back with a group that, had very low expectations from the outside. I mean, I can't tell you how many people. I'm sure that in the talks before I would log on to our coaches panel Zoom, everybody's talking about like, man, they're going to have a rough year. I remember
No one said.
Doug Craig saying to me, "Yeah, you guys had a good run." That one sticks out to me the most. And I was just like, man, you guys are kicking dirt on us real early. But like you said, you just got to take it. It's kind of like back in 2022. I know we went 26-0 up until that one loss in the semifinal, but no one expected us to be that good that year. We were really young. We had bunch of sophomores playing, And it was just kind of like, man, just like this is a great run. Let's just keep it going. And that's kind of you look at it with these guys. Obviously, for the seniors, you want to try to get them there because they've been a part of a couple of losses, and you hope that you can make a run to get to that opportunity. And more so this year, more than any other year, I think all 8 teams that are in the tournament have a chance to win it. It's just one of those things that we are probably a year ahead of schedule as far as the success that we're having. But kids grow up quick, especially when we challenge them the way that we do with our off season and then our in season and out of conference games.
Yeah. So let's talk about your losses this year. You lost to some great programs, Benedictine, Varina, who's I think very much one of the favorites in four,
Mm-hmm.
Riverside, one of the favorites in five, and then South Lakes, obviously one of the defending champion and a favorite in six, and then Gainesville, who's on the rise. Yeah, wins over Trinity, wins over Landon. I didn't see them, but they're always pretty good, I believe. And then obviously Forest Park and some of the other teams around here. So I don't. You didn't have any losses to be embarrassed about
No,
this year, and you had some wins to be happy with. So all in all, I mean, this is you had you did well with the schedule that you had.
right. And it's like you said, we wanted to challenge ourselves and also realize that it was not going to be the same level to start as the year before because those guys had been through it and knew what to expect. And even the losses that we had that year, I think all our losses were to eventual state champions, which is crazy to think. Um, so just looking at it, like you said, the to travel to South Carolina early in the season, to go somewhere with our team and have them have to bond that way and play in a tournament style with 3 games back to back to back. You really get to see who you can trust at that point and who you can rely on early on. Then they had to see what it was like having a team come into your gym that is very talented in Varina and Riverside, and we hadn't lost a home game at that point in the last 2 years. So those guys, they got shown what it was like to play at that type of level. And then we traveled to South Lakes and all those games, which was funny enough, it was a game that was right there. It was about 4 or 5 points, maybe in the third or early in the fourth. And then we just had young, team mistakes where we just lose focus and turn the ball over a couple times or lose a guy that we know that we can't lose for an open shot. So all those games and those losses and even the wins against the good teams were times to learn how to execute now. And I thought that in our last 2 games that were tight games where we didn't shoot the ball great, that we were able to execute and get stops when we had to, and that's a part of playing a tough schedule early on.
Yeah, and you went on a long winning streak. Obviously probably not quite playing the teams on the level of Varina and Riverside and Benedictine, but you got your confidence back. Do you think you're a much better team than you were when you took those losses earlier in the year?
Oh, 100%. We're not even the same team as then. Just rotation wise, some of the guys weren't playing as many minutes then. We're playing more minutes now. Um, you know, as much as it is a learning experience for the kids, it's a learning experience for us as a staff and as coaches to know who we can rely on in certain spots, who we can like pull in that sort of situation, who we can ask to guard this guy in this sort of spot. And, it says all of that is, the season is for, and hopefully you can be successful in the midst of that. And we were, winning the district again for the 8th consecutive time for the regular season, the 7th for the tournament. And then we got a lesson in what it's like to have to play knowing that you've already clinched something and playing against a team that really, really wants to beat you. And when we lost that Gainesville game, we did not come into that game with the level of focus needed for that sort of situation on the road against a team that was hungry for a win against you. And then obviously, some other things happened with foul trouble and the way the game is called. But that's just the game. It is what it is. You don't complain about it. You try to get it done. And we weren't ready to play. They played really hard and they really kicked our tails on the glass. But our kids looked like a team that knew they had already clinched first place. And that's the lesson learned. And that is that you have to play every game like it doesn't matter what the record is because you're trying to win a basketball game.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that night, and we ended up losing. And I thought it refocused us, which was good, and then got us on this streak that we're on now.
Does Gainesville have some kids coming back next year?
I mean, they're losing a lot. I can't speak on what they might lose as far as transfers or
Oh
who's going to
gosh.
leave in private schools like that, but I can tell you that the same olds were in the stands at our game doing their recruiting. So I'm pretty much assuming that it ain't for any more of our kids, but it could be. But they have a really good one over there that was a sophomore this year, and that's usually something that ends up happening in those sorts of situations. So if he comes back, I think that they can be pretty decent, but they lose some really key guys in their senior class. So
Right. So we'll talk about the Colonial Forge game. You really didn't have a trouble in the semifinals is always is the most stressful night for you because even if you lose the final, the season does go on.
correct,
Who'd you play in the semifinal again, Coach?
Gainesville.
Gainesville. Okay, so you beat Gainesville districts. You beat them in the regional semis. And talk about Forge a little bit. I know Chris Jolly in our last time we talked says they're a very physical team, very athletic. Not the best scoring team that you'll ever see.
Right. I mean, that's. I mean, I thought that his description kind of fit. More of a rugged style, not like a high flying scoring team. Some physical kids. Every kid coming over to shake hands during the introductions looked like they were a football kid, or they just have the best weightlifting program ever down at Colonial Forge. But it was one of those things that even in the semifinal and the final, as much as it might have got contested, the game gets closed like 3 or 4. At no point in time did I feel like we weren't in control of the games.
Right.
It just was one of those things. Can we sustain our level to stretch it out? And that's what you have when you have a young team, which, like I said, reminds me of 2022. We just don't blow teams out. Like, we get up by 10 or 11 and they close it to 4. We get up by 15, they close it to 7. And so I didn't, they did some things. They got a good wing player. Like I said, some physical guys inside. They had a guard that really got loose for a little bit. Um, they're just not going to be that team that's like an explosive scoring team, but
Mhm.
they'll definitely grind you out. It's going to be an interesting matchup with them and Oscar Smith because Oscar Smith obviously has a lot of athletes, so they can kind of counterbalance Forge in that regard. It's just how much they're going to get out of their bench.
Now, you have kids who have not been on this stage in a tournament before. They haven't
Right.
played lots of minutes. Were you happy with how they performed in the clutch situations?
Yeah, I was. We made the plays when we had to make the plays. Uh, And that was, like I said, the last loss that we had at the end of the regular season. That's something we did not do. We had a chance to make plays to actually pull that game out. We didn't make them. But when the guys had to step up and make a big shot, they made a shot, even if they hadn't been shooting it well that day. When it was time to get a stop and get that rebound, we got that stop and got that rebound. So always tell our guys it's about making timely plays in those type of possessions that kind of either stop their momentum or make yours keep going. And I think that our guys have done that. And it might be a lot that they don't even realize where they are and what the stakes are, but it is what it is at this point. As they said, a lot of young guys that haven't been in these moments, and you try the best you can to prepare them for it. And I think that they're doing a good job of handling it and succeeding.
Yeah. Now, Forge has the misfortune of having to go all the way down and play Oscar Smith, something that you had to do last year. No, you didn't travel. Carlos had to travel down there last year. But Forge has to. You avoided it by winning the game. Do they
Mhm.
have a chance against Oscar Smith?
I mean, it's a tough one. I think that right now, when you're looking at the teams that are left, I was watching the game yesterday with them in Landstown. Oscar Smith might be up there as far as like the top team, just the type of things that they present as far as how they defend and just it's just ravenous. They get after it's like sharks, with blood in the water. Athleticism. They got guys that can shoot it. And obviously making that trip on top of it isn't easy, which is a big reason why we wanted to get the win. Outside of trying to win our fourth straight region title, it was more so about not having to travel down to the 757 and dealing with the type of officiating that we probably would get down there. And obviously dealing with a very good, talented basketball team. Not saying that Landstown was any favor as far as like having them in the other matchup because they're extremely talented as well and very good and very well coached by Dwight Robinson. But not having to make that trip on a weekday was definitely something that was in the back of our heads.
Now, are you prepared to apologize to me publicly? Because when I saw Oscar Smith early this year, I said that is a basketball team, and you just shook your head and said, "Julie, you never know what you're talking about," or something of that
I
nature.
didn't
Are you
say
are
that.
you prepared to
I just
apologize to
I
me?
just said I just said that you're always ready to crown someone. And I said, so the bottom line is this: they got to come play somebody up here at some point. And my point was that every year you look at their records in a year, they got like one or two losses. And we have done pretty well against these teams in those similar situations. I hope it goes that way again. That was all I was saying.
So the answer is no. You're not going to apologize.
I'm not apologizing.
Tell us about Lansdowne. Lansdowne.
Very well coached team. They're going to execute the things they're going to do. They're young, so get used to seeing them for the next couple of years because they got a lot of really good young kids.
But they seem
Uh,
to always lose kids to transfer, though.
they do, and he, like you said, when you're a good coach, you lose kids or kids graduate. You figure out how to fix the problem, and you do it all over again. And here you have a coach that lost a very talented player to a transfer, and he is still sitting here in the state quarters with two or three losses. So,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. We got to be ready to play. We know that the different things that they're going to present as far as the difficulties that they're going to try to put on us, and we just got to make sure that we handle those and do the best we can to make it difficult for them.
They got some Division One talent, Coach Lansdale.
I think they got some guys that could possibly develop into that. I mean, it's not somebody that's going to jump off the page like right now, saying that they're a Division One guy.
What are some of the keys to success for you guys?
Rebounding is always going to be at the top of the list at this time of year. Taking care of the basketball against an active team, and then just guarding their sets. They run good stuff.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I'm not going to. Last question: If we could do this like in the old days, and we could play a quarter on a Thursday, a semi on a Friday, and a final on a Saturday, would you sign up for that?
I mean, I would sign up for it being the semifinal and final at one place for sure. I loved it when it was like that. Kind of like making it a trip and being able to watch the other teams and sitting in the stands and doing it that way. The space out is different. I feel like this year we have the quarterfinal and final on Tuesday, Friday, and then you got a week until the final.
It's weird.
Uh, yeah, it's a big gap, but you know, money always talks. So whoever is willing to pay the money or pay the fee, or if the people can bring their fee down, just the fact that we're sitting right down the street from Mason and nobody plays any games in there is crazy to me.
It's crazy. And also, if you really want money, could you imagine if John Marshall and Woodside and all the teams were all in the top bracket? I mean, that's if
Yeah,
you want money, you'd have 8,000, 10,000 people at the final. And
sure.
I think they are not letting us see like when you played. I mean, you had to be a great team to win state, and even if you're a great team, you could lose to another great team. So it
Sure.
wasn't like you were guaranteed a state title. I was talking to Mike today on the podcast whether we're comparing Grant to Jordan. I know you're going to sound crazy, but one thing I said you can't hold against Grant that he didn't win a state title because it was just different. It was different back then,
No,
and he took his team to the final and a semifinal, and he played great, but there was no guarantee back then that you were the only great team.
no,
You
and
got to
that's
be
the
two great teams. What's that?
right. That's the thing about it. We lost 2 years in a row, and I think that the people argue whether or not. I think the two teams that I played on Potomac are probably two best teams to be at Potomac, in my opinion. It just the amount of Division 1 level talent we had on that team. We just lacked this kind of size that the '95 team had, and 2014, obviously having a big kid, Trey Porter, and the big wings. But
Yeah.
our guard play, I mean, we were averaging 80 some odd points a game, which is crazy to think of in a high school game.
Yeah.
So,
As a coach today, you have to get yourself up for 3 or 4 big games to win a state title. Back then, it just took so much more. I mean, you had to be great and you had to really go on a run. And it just took some magic. It was not a
yeah,
given if you're great.
it wasn't. And then obviously, the regions were different with the old Northwest that we were in down there, having to deal with the Roanoke area and William
George
Flemings
Danville.
and then Cave Springs
Yeah.
and Danville, and so it just was just different. But I'm not going to say. I know that we have as old guys we reminisce about stuff and how it's so much harder. Listen, man, all I know is this: the last couple of years for us, just speaking for me, we have had to the first year beat Landstown and Oscar Smith in the quarterfinal and semifinal,
Mhm.
and then we had to play an all-time great Hayfield team trying to get a back-to-back state championship.
Yeah.
Then the next year we have to play probably even record wise, but probably the toughest game in the quarterfinal against Madison as far as a matchup goes. We got to play Oscar Smith again in the semifinal. And then we got to play an all-time great South Lakes team with a kid going to Michigan State. So, I mean, listen, this isn't like we're just down here like playing like random games to get to these points. And then you think about the Potomac team that we had to beat in the region to get there. And even the year before that, God rest his soul, Kyle and Ray, the semifinal that we had to win a few years ago that came down to a last shot.
Yeah.
There's still some really good teams, especially in Division Six.
Oh, I mean, the Hayfield team and the South Lakes teams are as good as any teams in Fairfax County. I mean,
and,
they're
and
great
we had to
teams.
play both.
Yeah, and they're not giving state titles away. My only point was it's just a little bit different in that.
It is.
Yeah,
Like I said, I'm not saying it's not different. I'm not
yeah,
saying that the road overall wasn't a little bit tougher. But at the end, when you get to the last 4 to 8, everybody is good.
yeah. Everybody's gonna be good,
Right.
there is. I like neutral sites, but it is nice to be at some of these home sites because you do get packed gyms, and that's kind of cool. I don't know if it's fair, but I was talking to Jim Smith last night, and in class three, they have real state tournament. They got to Lake Taylor last year. They have to travel. In a way, it's kind of nice. They kind of get that feel that you used to have
Well,
even
like you
before
said,
the state tournament.
our region, like you said, Colonial Forge got to go down to Oscar Smith.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, we've just been fortunate enough to have home court, so we haven't had to travel.
yeah. Any
But
any yeah, yeah.
if we did, we would have been going down there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And real quickly, any predictions on the South Lakes Hayfield or Woodson Westfield games?
I'm not going to predict who's going to win, but I mean they're good matchups. Obviously, I'm sure that Los would have rather been on the other side of the bracket, but I think that it's a good matchup for them because when you were looking at it up until the last couple of weeks, you had to think that Hayfield was one of the favorites as far as being one of the better teams up here in Northern Virginia, just with the amount of depth that he has in his starting lineup with guys that have been there, that have played, that can make plays for him on the perimeter and the inside. South Lakes having an all-time great player in Jordan Scott that can just basically take over a game, which I didn't see it, but I heard that's what he did in the regional championship game. That's just it should be a good basketball game. Very, very good coaches. You know that they're going to come up with some sort of scheme for each one of them to try to throw the other one off, and then it's all about who can make the adjustments the fastest. On the other side, you have Kevin Harris, a state championship winning coach, against Doug Craig, a state championship winning coach. So, like this is what I said. At this point, everybody's good and everybody's going to be well coached and play at a high level. Clearly the point guard for Woodson is special. So what if they can do with that to slow that down? But they got other guys that can get it done. I mean, he wasn't even the district player of the year in their district, which is crazy enough to say. But that shows how good his basketball team is. And then obviously Kevin's got a lot of guys that can play and that are trying to prove that they should be in this spot because everybody, had them as the kind of the fancy like kind of pick for the year as far as like Westfield, watch out for them. I just, I love the fact there's a lot of good matchups, a lot of good basketball. I just wish it wasn't all in different places.
Yeah, yeah. Kevin, yeah, that's the thing. I wish I could watch every game. I will watch every game, but I'll probably know the scores of some of them when I watch it. Kevin has done a tremendous job at Westfield, even though he does
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of talent. But sometimes that's not the
Listen, man, like talent don't mean that you're gonna be good.
yeah,
I could go down the line with some guys that had some talent that won 7 games. So,
no, exactly.
you got to coach your kids
Yeah, but one thing I'll say is the top 7 teams in the state are in the tournament. There's no
for
doubt
sure.
about it. I'm not nothing against Colonial Forge; they're a good team. But what I'm trying to say is, you got Woodson, you got South Lakes, you got Patriot, you got Oscar Smith, you got Landstown, South Lakes. I mean, you got everyone in there that people want to see.
Right.
So whoever wins the state title is going to be a good team, a
For
great
sure.
team. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, Coach, look, I appreciate you doing this. Maybe if things work out for you, maybe I'll be talking to you later on this week.
I hope so. I hope so.
Okay, Coach. Talk to you
All right.
soon, man. Good luck.
All right. Bye.
I appreciate it. Yeah.